Incredible turnaround. Fired mechanic's hidden act of kindness sparks 7 luxury SUVs overnight. Joe stood at the edge of his small garage, grease-stained coveralls hanging from his frame like a forgotten memory of better days. He had always prided himself on fixing not just cars, but the inseparable bond between the mechanics of life and the machinery of work. Now he felt unravaged, a fire burning within him after being unexpectedly let go by his uncle during a furious fight. The trust he'd placed in their family business shattered like a broken windshield, and now all that loomed was uncertainty. Could he face Lisa? The thoughts twisted in his mind, an unyielding knot of fear. What would she think? He knew he had to make things right, for her, for their kids. Yet standing there, he felt the doubt creep beneath his skin. What kind of father would he be if he couldn't even provide a job? He pushed past the overwhelming despair, navigating the tight space littered with tools and old manuals. The bills had begun to stack up, an unforgiving chorus that sang of impending failure. A mechanic without a shop was like a slow-moving train running off its rails. He could feel the engine sputtering to a standstill. With each mounting pressure, his breath became erratic, and his hands trembled. Were they prepared for the conversations about groceries, school, and nights filled with restless wondering? He questioned whether he still held any value in his family's eyes. Before he could spiral deeper into his thoughts, Mrs. Thompson, his elderly neighbor, approached with her dilapidated old sedan. The tires were as flat as his morale. The paint had seen better days, much like Joe himself. He glanced at her, eyes filled with hopeful anticipation, and he hesitated. He had no money, yet the idea of leaving her stranded knocked against his conscience. Could that small act of kindness become a lifeline for him? So he nodded, a smile plastered across his face despite the tumult within. "Let me take a look," he found himself saying. As he spent long evenings in his garage, Joe found an escape in the rhythm of his wrenches, each turn bringing clarity to his muddled thoughts. The more he worked on her car, the more he felt the pressure ease, even if just a tiny bit. Helping Mrs. Thompson allowed him to breathe. It became a ray of light amidst the storm. Yet every time he wrenched open a bolt, he could feel the creeping anxiety about his fate digging deeper. What if no one would hire him? He peered out toward the lonely street as days blurred into nights. Each passing moment heightened the fear of failure, the thought of letting his family down clawing at his insides. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos.
And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as fate would have it, snippets of his goodwill caught the attention of others. That ordinary act of fixing an old car for free turned into a story that spread like wildfire throughout Maplewood, capturing hearts and igniting conversations. For Joe, the weight of the world felt unbearably heavy as whispers of admiration reached his ears. Yet, like a double-edged sword, the newfound attention offhandedly threw his doubts into chaos. Was he truly deserving of this spotlight? Every night, the mounting pressure morphed into something darker and more consuming. As he faced his neighbors now rallying around him, the question clawed at him. Could one act of kindness really usher in the change he so desperately sought, not just for him, but for everyone? The crowd's anticipation didn't just feed his anxiety, it challenged him, forcing a reckoning with his purpose. Just as he stood to address them, a voice from among the growing throng called out, demanding more than just warmth and charity. It shattered the placid image he had built. All the while, doubt fused seamlessly with a growing sense of urgency. Was his kindness enough to truly affect the changes needed in Maplewood? The realization crashed upon him. The stakes were high, and the path ahead led further into murky waters. An undeniable truth loomed. He had to navigate not just his own needs, but those of a community now watching, waiting. The fire in Joe's belly flickered wildly, like a campfire trying to fight off the evening chill. With every cheery face peering back at him, he felt the weight of their expectations press down harder. What if he failed? What if the kindness he extended to Mrs. Thompson was nothing more than a fleeting respite in the storm of his life? The roof of his garage, usually a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, trapping not just vehicles but his hope and ambition as well. "Joe, we believe in you," someone shouted from the crowd, an echo that ignited a flicker of encouragement. But that small flame was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming dread of inadequacy. What could he possibly offer that they didn't already have? Their eyes searched for a leader, but he felt like a fraud teetering on the edge of oblivion. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, his heart pounding against his ribs. He stuttered, the words stalling in his throat. He pictured Lisa and the kids, and how he could no longer hide behind the comforts of stability. He needed to build something for them, something more than just the scattered wreckage of his former life. I know things are tough now, he began, swallowing his rising fear. But I believe that we can work together to push through it all.
Each word felt heavier than the last, a step taken on dangerous, unsteady ground. There was no script for this, no preset path. The tension hung in the air like the impending thunderstorm that was moving closer, and he knew he had to seize it. Just then, another voice cried out, this time from the back. "What do you plan to do, Joe? What's your big idea?" The raw honesty hit him like a punch to the gut. He had no plan, just a flickering light in the darkness and a community that needed him. "Honestly, I don't know yet," he admitted, the truth spilling out in a raw admission. "But something has to change. We can't just wait for help to come. We need to pull together, to lift each other up." The echo of vulnerability reverberated within him, almost releasing some of the pressure built up like a car tire near bursting. He watched as skepticism morphed into contemplation in the crowd's faces. Uncertainty was palpable, a living thing, and yet he felt an odd sense of empowerment amidst their scrutiny. Perhaps even in his turmoil, there lay a catalyst for something greater. As he dug through his foggy thoughts, a realization remained stubbornly present. He'd spent his whole life fixing things, and it was time to harness that instinct beyond the confines of mere mechanics. "I can't do it alone, but I will take the first step. Let's come together and fix what's broken. Not just cars, but each other's spirits, too." The words gained traction, and Joe could almost visualize a bridge forming between him and the neighbors, slowly absorbing them, uncertainties fading in the slowly building solidarity. That flicker of hope ignited interest, drawing eyes firmly to him, and he realized he had and would continue to tap into something profound within himself that had long been dormant. The crowd's murmurs began to shift from doubters to supporters, and a strange vibrancy filled the room. But just as inspiration surged, another challenge emerged. The sudden appearance of an old rival from his past, Derek, from a competing shop across town, stunned the audience into silence. Derek had always embodied a world that Joe felt he was desperately trying to escape. Clashing with him now might threaten everything Joe had just ignited. The moment of confrontation loomed, and Joe felt the stirrings of fear once again. He needed to muster all the growth he had undergone in this fleeting moment of clarity. Did he possess the courage to face his past and the man who had always belittled him? The time had come to confront Derek and change everything once again. Joe's heart raced as Derek stepped forward, a confident smirk plastered across his face. The stark contrast between them felt like a spotlight illuminating Joe's insecurities. Was this really the moment he would confront everything about his past? Derek's reputation loomed over him, the rival who never missed a chance to belittle Joe, to remind him of his shortcomings. This was a test, a glaring opportunity to either succumb to fear or rise to the occasion. "Long time no see, Joe," Derek said, his voice oozing with derision. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, tension thickening the air like humidity before a storm. Joe swallowed hard. This was not the reunion he had envisioned. Instead of a nostalgic exchange, it felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. "What do you want, Derek?" Joe managed to ask, his voice steadier than he felt. He could hear the murmurs of the crowd, their anticipation electric. "I just came by to see how things were going for you," Derek replied, feigning a casualness that did nothing to mask his intent. "Got a little gathering here, huh? Looks like you finally decided to step out of the shadows." "Maybe you should step back into them," Joe shot back, feeling a surge of defiance radiating through him. This was the moment he'd feared and craved simultaneously. "I'm not afraid of your games anymore. I'm ready to build something real." Derek's laughter rang through the crowd, a cold reminder of their shared history. "Build? With what? Your broken dreams and scattered hopes?" He stepped closer, his presence threatening.
Each word felt like a knife, yet instead of retreating, Joe stood firm. "I'm using what I have," Joe replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "And what I have is the determination not to let people like you define who I am." He glanced back at the onlookers, their eyes wide and filled with curiosity. They needed to see strength, not just in his words, but in actions. Derek's expression shifted, the mockery replaced by a flicker of concern. "You're serious, aren't you? I'm carving a path. I may be starting from scratch, but I'm not doing it alone. People are tired of being sidelined." Joe took a step toward Derek, narrowing the gap between them. "They want support, not threats. This isn't about you anymore." A palpable silence enveloped the crowd. Joe felt every heartbeat quicken, felt their collective anticipation. Not only was he confronting Derek, he was reclaiming control over his narrative, his life. Yet as he stood there, adrenaline coursing, he was painfully aware that doubt still lingered. Was this display of strength merely an act, a facade to mask the simmering fear inside? "Make no mistake, Joe," Derek retorted, the veneer cracking. "This won't end well for you. You can't fix what's broken without the right tools." For a moment, Joe hesitated. Derek's words clawed at his confidence, poking holes in the shield he had just erected. But then it hit him. He had been fixing things his whole life, leveraging the sparse tools he had. Whether it was repairing a car or breathing new life into a community, Joe had always thrived when faced with adversity. "Maybe I don't need the best tools," Joe said, steadying his breath. "Maybe I just need the right mindset."
With that, he turned away from Derek and faced the crowd completely, revealing a newly forged determination. "This is bigger than my past. It's about a future worth fighting for." The murmurs around him erupted into quiet affirmation, and he felt the embers of resolve blossoming in the hearts of those who stood with him. Joe wasn't just encouraging his neighbors. He was reaffirming his own journey, one fueled by resilience and a commitment to change. But as he felt the momentum shift in his favor, he couldn't ignore the familiar voice of doubt that whispered through the chaos. What if he retaliates? That question lingered ominously in his mind as Derek's eyes darkened with challenge. The stakes had risen. The consequences of failure felt more tangible than ever. Would Joe's newfound courage be strong enough to withstand the storm? In that pivotal moment, Joe steadied himself on the precipice of profound change. The coming days would demand more than just courage. They would require strategy, and the knowledge that the biggest battles would not be fought against others, but against his own insecurities. As Derek moved to retort, Joe stood resolute, ready to face whatever came next. The true test was beginning, and this was only the first confrontation. Would he emerge stronger, or would his past drag him back into darkness? He was about to find out. As Joe turned his back on Derek, a wave of electricity surged through him. Suddenly, he was aware of the eyes of the crowd resting upon his shoulders like a mantle, heavy yet invigorating. It was as though he had stepped off a precipice into a new realm where the ground was uncertain but filled with possibility. He inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the moment, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. A flicker of discomfort shifted beneath the surface, however. What if this act of defiance didn't lead to empowerment, but to further humiliation? He could almost feel Derek's laughter echoing in his ears, a taunting reminder of past failures. But Joe was done living by the shadows of those memories. He had a mission now, a journey in front of him that called out for more than mere bravado. "Believe in change," he murmured to himself, the words a mantra now. He had always prided himself on fixing things, cars, broken relationships, even his own mind in quiet moments of reflection. Construction required tools, but so did rebuilding a life. He felt the heat rising, and for the first time in what felt like ages, he embraced the discomfort it brought. As he forced his gaze around the crowd, he caught glimpses of their faces, some animated with hope, others clouded with doubt. Each expression imbued him with a sense of responsibility, a fiery determination to not falter now. Looking back at Derek, who had momentarily lost his edge, Joe felt a quickening of purpose. It was time to elevate their past rivalry to something greater, something that would shake the foundations of both their lives. "From this moment, we reshape our stories together," he declared, raising his voice. "We've all faced challenges, some manufactured by the likes of you, Derek. But today marks a turning point. No more allowing ourselves to be cast aside. We will celebrate resilience, hard work, and the communities we can forge." The words echoed, buoyed by the charged atmosphere. Gradually, he noticed the shift in energy. The crowd began to murmur, some nodding, others letting out soft cheers.
He suddenly felt vast and invincible, perhaps for the first time. But how could he translate this moment of inspiration into actionable change? His thoughts whirled, the gears of his mind grinding with urgency. Action plans, Joe, he thought frantically. You need to create a foundation, build strategies that can withstand Derek's attempts to sabotage you. He sifted through the vocabulary of his past experiences, honing in on the critical moments when he had applied creativity to survive. Those thoughts morphed into a mental blueprint, designed out of necessity. Longing to channel this newfound adrenaline, Joe envisioned a community workshop, a safe space for people to share skills, exchange knowledge, and embrace their craft. A gathering that transcended Derek's negativity, showcasing resilience and mutual support. That's it, he breathed slowly, contemplating the implications. He would provide resources, mentorship, and a chance for everyone to be heard. Those who thrive on belittling will find no home here, he stated, more to himself than anyone else. But even as those concepts ignited excitement within him, shadows of doubt crept back. What if I'm being naive? A disquieting notion lingered. Derek's influence could permeate any plan he crafted. The ability to instill fear or attract followers could be potent enough to derail Joe's ambitions before they even began. As Joe's resolve clashed with uncertainty, he realized that he was not just fighting Derek, he was navigating through uncharted territories of his own self-doubt. The murmurs rose again, this time more determined and resolute. It was a blending of his own growing beliefs with the hopes shared in the crowd. The stakes had escalated, and he felt the weight of every decision pressing on him. This was the beginning, a path fraught with risks, challenges, and moments where the thin line between failure and success would be tested. Was he prepared to step fully into this new role as a leader? Would he truly find the tools necessary to face both his own demons and Derek's retaliation? He knew one thing for certain. He had set the wheels in motion, and as the crowd began to form around him, miles of possibilities waiting to be defined, he understood that each step would draw from his past while forging an uncharted journey ahead. Little did he know, the real test of his resolve awaited him closer than he could perceive, and each decision would transcend mere strategy.
It would rip through the fabric of his belief in himself. As Joe stood before the crowd, their anticipation palpable, he grappled with the enormity of what lay ahead. Could his vision of a workshop truly materialize? The idea invigorated him, yet the specter of doubt loomed ever closer, a shadow lingering, whispering reminders of past failures and misjudgments. Could he muster the stamina needed to transform not only his own life, but also those of others caught in the throes of despair? The energy radiating from the audience became a living entity. It buzzed around him, pushing him toward action. He sensed the need to move quickly, to translate this moment of fervor into something tangible. Joe's thoughts began racing like a train careening down a track with no end in sight. Research the successful models, he thought, mentally scouring through every past workshop he had attended, dissecting their strengths and shortcomings. What made them resonate? What could he borrow, refine, and reinvent? Ideas flew through his mind like fireworks, but structure remained elusive. Determined not to lose momentum, he decided to connect with a few individuals from the crowd. Who here has experience running workshops or outreach programs? Joe asked, scanning the faces around him. A few hands went up hesitantly, but one face shone with confidence, Elena, a teacher from the local community college. Her smile was immediately infectious, anchoring Joe. I can help you plan the curriculum, she offered, her enthusiasm evident. Joe nodded appreciatively, feeling a flicker of relief. Let's meet tomorrow and flesh out the details. Your insight would be invaluable. Elena's presence gave him hope, a fragment of reassurance that they could tackle this challenge together. But as he exchanged contact information with her, Derek's voice crept back in his mind like a persistent itch. How will you keep it alive? Once you start, he'll strike. The thought left him uneasy, but he shook it off, focusing on the small victories before him. Collaborating with Elena was a step forward, a choice to bring others into the fold. Later that evening, Joe sat at his kitchen table, papers sprawled out before him. An old blueprint for a car restoration lay in disarray next to fresh sheets filled with notes he had taken during the day. The contrast highlighted something profound. Each time he rebuilt the engine of a car, there had been failures too, false starts and miscalculations. Yet he learned each time, slowly honing his craft. This endeavor would be no different. His phone buzzed suddenly, startling him. A message from Elena illuminated the screen. Excited to brainstorm tomorrow. Let's think big. He chuckled at the enthusiastic tone. It was a small reminder of what he could cultivate in this fledgling initiative. Hope. Through the night, he drafted ideas, strategies to create a nurturing space rather than a battleground. Joe began to see the outlines of a supportive network forming around him, one where each member would drive the process forward. He envisioned a schedule filled with diverse sessions, mechanical skills, creative arts, financial literacy, all aimed at personal growth. Yet, as his energy surged, the shadows crept back with a chilling reminder. Derek had not yet engaged in a retaliation that could unravel everything. Joe paused, recognizing that the road ahead would be fraught with opposition. Perhaps he didn't have all the expertise needed, but the intention propelled him forward. "I'm starting something real here," he insisted under his breath, a mantra against the flickers of fear. Would he really be able to galvanize a group strong enough to weather the incoming storm? The question lingered, heavy with potential, yet tantalizingly uncertain. It was time for him to dig deeper, uncover hidden strengths, and face the reality of leadership and Derek. With daylight threatening to break through his window, a new resolve washed over Joe. "Tomorrow marks day one," he whispered to himself. "But what will that look like when Derek confronts me?" The realization sent a shiver down his spine, igniting an urgency to prepare. The weight of responsibility loomed, not for others alone, but for himself too. Would he have the grit to confront the challenges ahead? As dawn approached, Joe sensed it was a pivotal moment, charged with both dread and exhilaration. Should he embrace the fear, or allow it to paralyze him? He knew one pang: the battle was only beginning, and his next decision would determine how he stepped into this transformative chapter of his life. As the sun crested the horizon, casting a warm glow in Joe's kitchen, the awakening world outside mirrored the stirrings within him. Today was about more than just starting a workshop. It was about redefining who he was. With every beat of his heart, apprehension and determination waged a secret war. Was he truly ready to step into this leadership role? Filled with promise, he moved to the living room, where his dry erase board stood, a blank canvas awaiting the brushstrokes of his ambitions. He paused to admire it, feeling both excitement and trepidation. The first step was to define his mission. What was it that he wanted people to walk away with? Knowledge, confidence, empowerment? He scribbled those words across the board. Each one felt like a stepping stone toward the future he envisioned. Yet still, a weight hung over him, a constant reminder of the obstacles he faced, most notably, Derek. The thought of his rival lurking in the background forced him to confront a painful truth. The specter of Derek symbolized more than just a competitor. He resonated with Joe's feelings of inadequacy, whispering doubts that threatened to choke his resolve. But Joe understood that growth often required confrontation, not just of external adversaries, but of the internal battles as well.
He couldn't let fear dictate his actions. With renewed energy, Joe grabbed his phone, preparing to connect with Elena. Collaborating with her felt essential to building a sturdy foundation. She merited respect, not only for her credentials, but for how well her enthusiasm complemented his vision. The message was brief, but it echoed in his mind. Let's not just plan for success, let's anticipate hurdles. As he paced the room, Joe reflected on the evenings spent tinkering with old cars. Each project had taught him that an obstacle was merely a challenge to be navigated. Sometimes he had to backtrack, recalculate steps, and then forge ahead. Emotions teetering, he resolved to apply those insights to his new endeavor. After setting an appointment with Elena, he shifted focus. Preparing mentally for potential conflicts, especially with Derek, became a priority. What would he say when confronted? He practiced in front of the mirror. "I'm here to build and to help others grow. Your negativity does not define me." Still, a lingering uncertainty gnawed at him. What if Derek's venomous words found fertile ground in the doubts he struggled to bury? Hours melded into a gripping frenzy of idea generation. Joe created an outline for the workshop, dividing it into weekly themes, each designed to engage participants at a personal level. All sessions would prioritize interactivity, ensuring the learning was dynamic and unforgettable. But would they even come? Confidence clashed with the looming uncertainty. The flutter of his phone snapped him back from introspection. An incoming message reflected Elena's same vigorous energy. "Ready for this kickoff? Think of the impact you'll have." Her words sparked a flicker of courage within him. Yet, just as quickly, his internal pessimism flickered back. Who was he kidding? What qualifications did he have to lead? His machinery experience was merely a lifeline, but where was his authority in this new realm? Joe braced against the internal tide, focusing on the essence of his endeavor, building a community that could heal and thrive together. At that moment, something awakened inside him. The realization washed over him that authority wasn't bestowed, it was forged in the fire of one's convictions. Perhaps the actual shift he sought was not merely about imparting knowledge, but rather nurturing vulnerability, oneself included. There was power in admitting uncertainty. As twilight settled over the town, Joe found himself glowing not just with potential, but with purpose. The true challenge wasn't about dodging Derek's machinations or industry doubts, but about standing firm in the knowledge that, to begin, was an extraordinary act in itself. As he prepared for the day ahead, a thought crossed his mind. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow would present unforeseen challenges, each demanding resilience. What Joe didn't foresee was Derek's plans unfolding in the shadows, threatening to derail everything he aimed to achieve.
The thrill of the challenge was invigorating, but as he lay in bed, the question loomed heavy. How would he react when faced not just with dissent, but also with his own fear? He drifted into an uneasy slumber, knowing tomorrow held more than just opportunities. It held the potential for confrontation that could change everything. With the first light of dawn breaking through the curtains, Joe awoke with a sense of urgency coursing through him. It was as if the universe conspired to remind him that today was not just another day. It was the moment to redefine his trajectory. He shook off the remnants of doubt that clung stubbornly from yesterday, forcing himself to focus instead on the purpose behind his workshop. After a quick shower, he slipped into a crisp shirt and jeans, determined to project the confidence he was still finding within. As he made his way to the kitchen, the aroma of coffee beckoned him, feeding both his body and ambition. Sipping from his mug, he replayed Elena's message, invigorated by her belief in what they could achieve. But beneath the excitement flickered the shadow of Derek, a reminder of the battle that lay ahead. Joe tapped his finger on the table, contemplating how he could prepare himself emotionally for whatever Derek would throw his way. It was time to hone his skills, not just the technical ones required for running a workshop, but the art of resilience. He realized that by confronting his rival, he would also be confronting the specters of self-doubt he had nurtured for too long. He picked up his phone, contemplating whether to call Elena for a motivational pep talk. They had built a rapport based on mutual respect, and he knew that their synergy would be crucial today. Yet part of him hesitated. He wanted to prove to himself that he could handle this on his own. Summoning courage, he dialed her number, the sound of her upbeat voice immediately dispelling his anxiety. "Good morning, Joe. Ready to rock?" "More like gearing up for battle," he replied, sharing his concerns about Derek. "Remember, you're in the driver's seat. Focus on what you can control," Elena encouraged. "And don't underestimate your experiences. You've faced challenges before. Think of those late nights working on cars. This is just another tune-up." Her metaphor resonated deeply. Each mechanical challenge had demanded patience, creativity, and diligence, traits he needed now more than ever. As they fleshed out the day's agenda, Joe felt the invisible weight of expectation lift, replaced by a palpable sense of potential. Once the call ended, he set to finalizing his workshop materials, infusing every lesson with tangible experiences from his past. Each story of struggle intertwined with solutions he had discovered was a thread that bound them to the reality of growth and the importance of resilience. In doing so, Joe began to piece together room for vulnerability, modeling the very behavior he hoped to inspire in his participants. But the space he envisioned for openness clashed with the notion of confrontation with Derek. What if Derek dismissed his efforts? What if all of his aspirations crumbled under the weight of that skepticism? The uncertainty wrapped itself around him again, like a familiar blanket. However, he could feel the embers of determination beginning to glow brighter. The workshop time approached, and the tension mounted in his chest. Joe inhaled deeply, forcing himself to release the breath slowly, clutching onto a mantra silently. "I create my own narrative." He understood that regardless of how the workshop was received, it would be an expression of who he had become. His experiences weren't just qualifications, they were the very foundation of his truth. As he arrived at the venue, a wave of skepticism washed over him. Did he belong in this setting, poised to lead? However, as he stepped inside, a flicker of excitement drew him toward the setup. Participants began filtering in, each bringing their own hopes and fears, and in that moment, he caught a glimpse of the possibilities unfurling around him. Just when he felt a rush of confidence, the door swung open, and in walked Derek. With familiar arrogance, he surveyed the space, as though daring Joe to be imperfect. The air thickened. Joe felt the challenge deep in his bones. This was the moment. The confrontation awaited. Could he truly embody the leader he aspired to be, radiating confidence instead of wavering under Derek's piercing gaze?
Feeling his heart race, Joe realized that this transformative day had just begun, with both opportunity and collision looming. He drew in another breath, ready to shake the misconceptions of who he was. But little did he know, Derek had more than verbal barbs prepared. He harbored plans that could threaten not only the workshop, but the path Joe had bravely carved for himself. Joe's pulse quickened as he acknowledged Derek's presence, the man's smirk a stark reminder of the insecurities he had fought to shed. The electricity in the room resonated with an unspoken challenge, and Joe felt precariously balanced on the edge of self-discovery and denial. The workshop was intended to be a culmination of his journey, yet here was Derek resurrecting old fears, not merely as an opponent, but as a manifestation of doubt and judgment. With each person that entered, Joe forced himself to smile, greeting participants with enthusiasm he hoped would mask the turmoil brewing inside him. He remembered Elena's words. Today was about embracing his experiences and sharing the strength he'd gleaned from adversity. He could either let Derek's presence rattle him or use it as fuel for his resolve. When it was time to start, Joe took the floor. He reminded himself to breathe, to speak calmly. "Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to share a journey of resilience and growth with you today."
He found solace in the eager faces watching him. Their optimism ignited something inside him, a steadfast anchor in the turbulent sea of doubt. As he moved through his presentation, he spoke of turning failures into lessons, recounting the late-night engine repairs that tested his patience, the runs of bad luck that sometimes felt endless. The resonance of shared struggles became palpable, uniting him with the participants. Their nods and engagement inoculated him against Derek's looming presence. Yet each time Joe glanced at Derek, he felt a pull, a weighty reminder of what he feared most, a snide comment, a quick derailment of his confidence. And just as he was beginning to settle into his rhythm, Derek shifted in his seat, raising his hand. "Don't you think it's naive to think that growth is achievable for everyone? Some people are just destined to fail." The words dripped with contempt, leaving a chill that rippled through the room. Joe's heart dropped. The sincerity he'd witnessed was now dented by Derek's cynical intrusion. His instinct screamed to deflect, to retreat under the weight of ridicule. It wouldn't be the first time he'd let someone else define his worth, but this time something shifted. Joe realized that every ounce of hard-won knowledge and every scar earned from struggle fortified his truth. "Derek, I appreciate your perspective," he replied, keeping his tone steady. "Yet the narrative of destiny is a dangerous one. It strips us of agency. Each of us here has the power to shape our paths. I've seen it, how attempted repairs on a worn-out engine can yield surprising results when approached with creativity and resilience." Joe watched Derek's expression flicker, surprise mingling with irritation, as participants murmured in agreement. It felt invigorating, standing tall against the tide of negativity radiating from Derek. Embracing vulnerability was liberating. It forged an unexpected connection with everyone in the room around shared adversity. The workshop progressed, bouncing between education and inspiration. As Joe opened the floor for discussions, hands shot up, fueled by an organic eagerness to learn. He navigated the conversation, weaving personal anecdotes into critical lessons, dismantling the robust walls Derek had previously erected. Derek attempted to interject, but Joe countered each comment with insight, transforming potential confrontation into a nurturing dialogue. With every question he fielded, Joe experienced an exhilarating realization. Courage lived within those who dared to face their fears, not bury them. Then came the moment of honesty, unexpected yet revealing. "What if we could challenge ourselves? What if we dared each other to push beyond our comfort zones?" Joe invited. A ripple of excitement danced through the crowd, his challenge resonating. But as he embraced this flow of newfound energy, a flash of worry struck. Was he merely masking the deeper fissures still lurking inside?
And if Derek pushed back harder, what revelations might come to light? Ones that could unravel his progress and undermine his conviction. Chapter by chapter, Joe battled not only the specter of Derek, but also the shadows of his own insecurities. Yet the contrast of Derek's smirk and the fire of the group induced clarity. His next move was paramount. Joe felt compelled to take the leap, establish his ground once and for all, igniting deeper challenges among his participants. "Let's put ourselves to the test," Joe proposed, adrenaline surging through him. But just as he was about to present the ultimate challenge, something else dashed through the threshold. A new figure appeared, one Joe never expected, someone who might redefine everything he had come to believe about this day and his journey ahead. The door swung open, and in strolled Marcus, a former colleague from Joe's mechanic days, a figure who had seen Joe at his worst, yet also at his best. Marcus's face lit up with unexpected warmth, as if he were a lighthouse cutting through Joe's fog of self-doubt. There was an undeniable kinship between them, a shared history filled with countless hours of grease-stained late-night repairs and failed attempts that now felt like landmark achievements in retrospect. "Joe, I didn't think I'd find you here," Marcus called out, breaking the tension in the room. The participants turned, momentarily diverted from their discussions, drawn by this unexpected interruption. Joe's heart raced, not from fear, but from the sudden rush of support he desperately needed. "Marcus, what a surprise!" Joe managed to say, an undeniable grin spreading across his face. "What brings you here?" "I was in the area, and I heard you were leading a workshop. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing," Marcus replied, genuine enthusiasm lacing his words. Joe felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. This was the rapport he had longed for, one that provided validation without conditions. In a split second, he felt bolstered by the current of their friendship. Through Marcus, he regained a glimpse of the acceptance he had fought to earn, not just from others, but from himself. The atmosphere shifted, a collective energy buzzing with anticipation. Joe seizing the moment. "All right, everyone, that's the perfect segue. Let's welcome someone who knows a thing or two about resilience." He gestured to Marcus. "Why don't you share your story?" Marcus stepped forward, confidence radiating from him. He recounted tales of dodgeball with his underprivileged younger brother, many nights spent tinkering with busted engines, and the risky times that required embracing the unknown. His narrative paralleled Joe's own struggles, while simultaneously enriching the theme of growth that Joe wanted to instill in his audience. As Marcus spoke, Joe felt an avalanche of realization wash over him. This wasn't merely about the workshop or his battle with Derek.
It was an exploration of the bonds formed through adversity, the very essence of human triumph. They had both risen from their circumstances, diving headfirst into challenges and sharing those lessons with the world. After Marcus concluded, the room vibrated with applause, acceptance enveloping Joe like a warm blanket. He basked in the camaraderie they had reignited, a transformation infused with newfound hope and collective aspiration. Yet as the lively discussions blossomed anew, Joe's thoughts drifted back to Derek, hunched in the corner with that familiar smirk. Was Derek's cynical outlook merely a reflection of Joe's internal fears? Maybe Marcus's entrance wasn't just an uplifting moment, but an invitation to dig deeper, to re-examine why Derek's presence still troubled him so. With this realization came urgency. A thread had woven its way through the day. Joe wasn't just here to teach, he was here to confront. What would happen if he turned the lens back on himself one final time? Let's open the floor once more. This time, let's dig deeper. I see how much we're all learning from each other, but let's talk about the real hurdles. What's the fear holding you back? What fraction of your narrative feels unwritten? Joe posed, looking directly at Derek, whose expression had soured. The room fell silent, charged with anticipation. Would Derek stand and reinforce his derisive view, or would he surprise everyone? What lay beyond the door to this next stage of Joe's journey? An impressive affirmation or a stark confrontation? Only the ensuing dialogue would reveal the truth waiting to be uncovered. Joe stood at the front of the workshop, a lineage of shared experiences woven around him like a tapestry. He had finally transformed fear into a vehicle for growth. His resolve, once a flickering flame, now blazed brilliantly, fueled not just by knowledge, but by shared stories that underscored a powerful truth. Vulnerability was not a weakness, but a catalyst for connection. The palpable energy of the room surged, each participant smiling, nodding, and engaging. Then, as the buzz grew, he turned his gaze towards Derek, who sat defiantly with arms crossed, an island against the current of mutual support sweeping through the workshop. In that moment, Joe realized the true essence of leadership lay not in the absence of opposition, but in embracing it. "All right, Derek," Joe said, projecting calm authority. "It's your turn. What's your fear? What keeps you from stepping into the light just like the rest of us?" The question hung in the air, a challenge that reverberated like a drumbeat of possibility. Derek met his gaze, taken aback by the unexpected invitation. A perilous silence enveloped the room as everyone held their breath, invested in the outcome of this confrontation. "The real world isn't as simple as you make it, Joe," Derek shot back,
his bravado faltering just a bit. People can't just fix their lives by talking about it.
They need hard skills, real jobs. True, Joe acknowledged, but fixing a car starts by understanding its parts. It requires assessing what's wrong and digesting accordingly. The same applies to life. You can't just throw parts together. You have to understand how they work together, or else it becomes chaos. He felt the words resonate within him as he spoke them, a truth he had finally internalized. This interaction wasn't just pivotal for the audience, it was crucial for Joe's own journey. "Let me show you how repair can lead to renewal," he continued, voice steady. "How embracing challenges isn't merely about mechanics. It's about forging a community that uplifts each other." He gestured towards Marcus, who stood by his side. "We're not defined by our failures, but by how we draw from them, collectively." At that moment, Derek's defensive facade began to crack. The energy in the room shifted, and across the space, others began to nod in agreement. "Okay, Joe," Derek finally said, his voice softer, "but you're not trying to fix the whole world. You're working with a select few." "Maybe that's where you're mistaken," Joe replied. "Everybody deserves a chance, starting right here in this room. We're not just repairing machines, we're fostering resilience. It's not just about fixing, it's about growth and learning. Each of us starts somewhere." Suddenly, the enormity of the moment burgeoned. Joe comprehended the evolution not just in himself, but in Derek. He recognized that true strength lies in collaboration, even with those he had once viewed as enemies. This realization sparked a newfound clarity, solidifying his growth and approach. Over the weeks that followed, the workshop thrived, transforming into a beacon of hope for Maplewood. Inspired by Joe's journey, Derek gradually succumbs to the idea of collaboration. He began attending sessions sporadically, sparking conversations that once would have thrown Joe into a spiral of self-doubt. Each time Derek spoke, it became not a fight, but a dialogue, a realignment of perspectives, taking root in shared vulnerability. One evening, as Joe wrapped up another successful workshop session, he took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. The doubts that once haunted him had faded into the background, replaced by the tangible reality of accomplishment, a community revitalized, connections rebuilt, and lives touched. As he closed the chapter on the workshop series, the community called Joe forward for a final reflection. He stood proudly before them, each face a testament to what they had achieved together, hope blooming in places once overrun with fear and uncertainty. "I've learned that change is possible, even when it seems improbable," Joe said. "To fix a machine, you must understand it. Just as importantly, to rebuild a life, you have to embrace the parts that are broken and find ways to make them integral to the whole." The audience erupted in applause, acceptance woven into every cheer. Joe experienced a sense of fulfillment that surpassed his initial expectations. He had transformed from a man grasping at hope into a leader with a purpose. With newfound confidence, he mused over the lessons learned. Confront your fears, embrace vulnerability, and believe in the collective potential of community. At that moment, Joe knew he had wholly survived the crucible of self-doubt. He stood tall, no longer the mechanic lost in shadows, but a community leader illuminated by resilience, with firm roots grounded in both personal and collective growth. This was a new beginning. Now is the moment to step forward and embrace your own transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel that champions incredible stories of personal achievement. Leave a like right now to keep the momentum alive for others needing encouragement. Comment your thoughts or theories about Joe's evolution. Your voice matters. And don't wait another second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who are at their crossroads, because together we can ignite lasting change.